So in this video today I'm going to do a painting in my sketchbook and just go through some different techniques of layering on paint. I'm using a colour shaper here, and the beauty of this is that you can build up the layers, and as you can see here I'm scraping the paint on quite thinly, and in some parts it's thicker and quite opaque, and other parts it becomes like a glaze, a sort of a film that you can see through. And now I'm just putting in some words because that's what I like to do. So you can look at the edges of the paint that I have put in with the colour shaper, how some of them are rough, some of them sort of blend into the colour underneath, and some of them are quite sharp. This is really lovely to have the variety of edges by using that tool. So the way you get that variety is by the pressure that you press down using that colour shaper. So when I press hard, it becomes that the paint is thin. When I just let the colour shaper lightly touch the paper, the paint is much thicker. Okay, so now I am wanting to be quite intentional in an area with the paint. Most of the other places where I'm putting the paint on, I'm allowing accidents to happen and just sort of building up layers. With this shape on the left-hand side, I'm being quite intentional with the size of the brush strokes, the way that I'm applying the paint, so I'm using a lot of control. And then on the other page, I'm just using the same colours, but I'm using much less control. So I'm mixing the paint with water, I'm using it like a glaze, and I'm just sort of spreading that paint out. Now I'm using a pencil, just breaking through. And bringing in a lighter value here, and using the end of the paintbrush just to scratch through some of that wet paint there. So I'm overlaying thick paint here and building up an area that is lots of broken paint, lots of broken colour and short brush strokes, which is different from everywhere else in this little painting. Okay, now using a paintbrush, I'm going to have one quite controlled shape, and then on the other page, less control, using water and using that paint like a glaze, just letting it float over the top of the colours underneath as I build up that surface. Now I'm using a paint pen and applying paint in line, so I'm just using line here, and putting in some words and just having some line, and once again using a brush, different type of brush. So this is a pointy brush, and I can swirl it round, but using the paint reasonably thickly so I can get sort of a shape, and the paint can be quite sort of thick and opaque here. So spreading it out here, I can see through that, but I'm sort of building it up a little bit. And just spreading out this paint here to make a dark area, and using a paint stick again, paint pen again, just doing some loose, what I call 4-year-old drawing based on a flower. So just drawing some petals and stameny type things that sort of remind you of a flower a little bit. And now coming in with a really dark paint, almost black, and creating some quite sharp edges and shapes there. And then using some water with it, I'm going to create a glaze and just sort of push back some of those colours underneath. And now scraping this comb through to create some sort of lines through here. And now I'm coming in with some thick paint. So this is really thick on my paintbrush, and I'm creating shapes and edges with this. And I can see through some of this, so I can see through some of the drawing that I've done underneath, and I'll also be able to see some of the colour that's underneath there, but just sort of creating shapes and getting those nice edges happening where one colour is sort of butting up next to another colour. So I'm allowing the brush to sort of just loosely create these shapes. Some of the edges I'm wanting to be quite sharp, others I'm wanting to be quite soft. And now this is much thicker paint, and I'm just sort of spreading that around. Now look at this paint, it's not quite mixed properly. You can see a bit of green and blue coming through and scraping through with the comb, and there you can see those layers. You can see the depth in that painting as I've built up all those layers of paint using thick paint and then glazes over the top. Now coming in with another thick bit of paint and sharp edges, light next to light, and creating edges and shapes. You can see I've sort of created this one big shape there, and now I'm just going to put in a few little details. A lot of this has been made just through sort of building up layers of paint where I haven't had much control, and now I want to show a little bit of control. And here with the pencil I'm just putting in some light lines, which is different from the thick paint that's next to it, and then a little glaze just to sort of transition between the line and the colour. And then over here I've got a really sharp edge, and next to a sharp edge a smudgy mark always looks good, so that's why that's going there. And now with control and the painter's edge I'm getting a nice sharp edge there, and then I'm going to scratch through, and I'm just going to soften this space with this bit of paint with a little bit of water and a rag, and just sort of move the paint around a little bit there and see what happens. And this is what I'm doing here. So this is quite watery paint. I put it on and then I scratch through to get some lines coming out of the edges, and you can see here that that sort of suggests a flower or sort of a botanical thing or something bobbing in a wind, and that's how I like to draw my flowers and botanicals. And here's another shape, sort of light on light, and that paint is put on. I haven't mixed the paint completely, so I can get a few colours coming through on my paintbrush. Okay, and that's kind of done. So there I've shown you a wide variety of ways of using paint, just with building up areas of thin and thick paint and creating shapes and mixing paint together with the short brush strokes and allowing sort of accidental marks to happen.